What if I told you that the man who's been crowned as WWE's ultimate locker room leader, the tribal chief himself, Roman Reigns, has been causing absolute mayhem behind the curtain? What if everything you thought you knew about Roman's backstage persona was carefully crafted propaganda? The stories coming out right now are wild, and WWE does not want you talking about this. But we're about to blow the lid off one of the biggest backstage controversies in recent wrestling history. Welcome back to Wrestle Scope, where we dig deeper than anyone else dares to go. And trust me, after what you're about to hear, you're never going to look at the tribal chief the same way again. Let me start with this bombshell. Multiple sources from inside WWE have reported that Roman Reigns has been operating like an absolute tyrant backstage. We're talking about refusing to lose matches without corporate approval, demanding script changes at the last possible minute, and allegedly getting talent pulled from shows if they don't show him what he considers proper respect. And here's where it gets really controversial. Remember when Sami Zayn's incredible storyline with the Bloodline reached its peak? Sources claim Roman fought hard against putting Sami over in any meaningful way. The man who benefited from one of the greatest storylines in modern WWE history allegedly wanted to protect his image so badly that he nearly sabotaged the entire angle. But wait, it gets worse. There are whispers that younger talent are genuinely afraid to approach Roman with ideas. Not inspired, not motivated, afraid. We're hearing about an environment where speaking up means potentially ending your push before it even starts. Now, before the Roman apologists flood the comments, let me be crystal clear. I'm not here to tear down Roman Reigns, the performer. The man is undeniably talented, and his in-ring work speaks for itself. But we need to have an honest conversation about power dynamics in WWE and what happens when one star becomes untouchable. Let's break down the evidence piece by piece, because this isn't just gossip or dirt sheet speculation. These are patterns of behavior that have been building for years. First, there's the schedule situation. Roman has been working what many insiders call a part-time full-timer schedule. He's getting paid like the top guy, protected like the top guy, but working significantly fewer dates than other main eventers. Now, you might say he earned that privilege. Fine, but here's the problem. When other wrestlers asked for similar considerations for their health and family time, they were denied or told to drop the title. The rules, it seems, don't apply equally. Then we have the creative control clause. Multiple reports suggest Roman has near total veto power over his storylines. Again, top stars having creative input isn't new. Steve Austin had it, The Rock had it, John Cena had it. But those guys also had a reputation for elevating their opponents. They understood that their job was to make everyone in the ring with them look like $1,000,000. With Roman, we're seeing a different pattern. When was the last time someone came out of a program with Roman looking better than when they went in? Cody Rhodes needed 2 WrestleManias to finally get his moment. Drew McIntyre has been spinning his wheels. Even established stars like Kevin Owens have struggled to maintain momentum after feuding with the tribal chief. The Jey Uso situation is particularly telling. Jey's babyface turn should have been a massive moment for his solo career. Instead, we watched him float in mid-card purgatory for months while still being tied to Roman's storyline. It's almost like the Bloodline saga couldn't let anyone truly break free and succeed on their own terms. And let's talk about the elephant in the room, the locker room division. WWE's roster has apparently split into 2 camps. There's the group that's close to Roman, benefits from his influence, and stays in his good graces. Then there's everyone else, who has to navigate around the tribal chief's preferences like they're walking through a minefield. Veterans who've worked in multiple companies have privately noted that they've never seen one active wrestler wield this much backstage power since the peak of Hulk Hogan's politicking in WCW. And we all know how that ended. Now, let's pump the brakes for a second and look at the other side of this story, because context matters. Roman Reigns came back from leukemia and had to rebuild his entire career. The man faced years of rejection from fans who refused to accept him as the chosen one. He persevered through injury, illness, and the most hostile crowd reactions in modern WWE history. When he finally turned heel and became the tribal chief, it was the creative rebirth WWE desperately needed. His supporters will argue that he's earned every bit of influence he has. They'll point out that he's been the most consistent draw for WWE in an era where star power is harder to cultivate than ever before. The ratings bump when Roman appears is real. The merchandise sales don't lie. Love him or hate him, people tune in to see what the tribal chief does next. They'll also say that if WWE management has given him creative control, it's because he's proven he knows what works. His character work during the Bloodline era has been phenomenal. The slow burn storytelling, the family dynamics, the psychological manipulation of Jey Uso, this was all elevated by Roman's commitment to the character. And here's something that often gets overlooked. Roman has quietly mentored several younger wrestlers. Solo Sikoa's development, the Usos reaching new heights as performers, even the way he worked with Sami Zayn to create magical moments, these things don't happen without a leader who cares about the product. So maybe Roman isn't a tyrant. Maybe he's just a perfectionist who understands his value and refuses to be misused by a company that has a history of fumbling their top stars. But here's where this story gets really complicated, and why I think it matters beyond just Roman Reigns himself. WWE is at a crossroads. They're under new management with TKO, they've got monster TV deals, they're heading into a Netflix era, and they're relying heavily on one man to anchor their main event scene. That's a dangerous game. What happens when Roman eventually steps away? What happens when he decides he wants to do movies full-time or when his body finally says enough? WWE has been so focused on making Roman untouchable that they've forgotten to build a deep main event roster that can survive without him. Look at how WWE handled things in the past. During the Attitude Era, if Stone Cold got hurt, you had The Rock, Triple H, Mick Foley, and The Undertaker ready to step up. During the Ruthless Aggression Era, if Brock left, you had Cena, Batista, Edge, and Randy Orton ready to carry the load. Right now, if Roman Reigns walked away tomorrow, who's ready to be the guy? Cody Rhodes is the obvious answer, but WWE's booking has been so Roman-centric that even Cody's championship reign feels like it exists in Roman's shadow. This backstage attitude controversy isn't just about whether Roman is difficult to work with. It's about a systemic failure to create an environment where multiple stars can thrive simultaneously. It's about what happens when a company becomes so dependent on one person that they can't afford to tell that person no. And this brings us to an uncomfortable truth that wrestling fans have been dealing with forever. Sometimes the most talented performers are also the most difficult to work with. Shawn Michaels in the 90s was notoriously hard to deal with, but he was having the greatest matches of his generation. Bret Hart was a perfectionist who clashed with management constantly, but his work rate was unmatched. Hulk Hogan's politicking nearly destroyed WCW, but he also made wrestling mainstream. The question isn't whether Roman Reigns is talented, he obviously is. The question is whether WWE has created a monster they can no longer control, and whether that's ultimately going to hurt the company and the roster in the long run. There's also a racial dynamic here that we can't ignore. Roman Reigns is a Samoan wrestler in a company that has historically centered its main event scene around white wrestlers. When he exercises power and demands respect, some people are quick to label it as being difficult or having a bad attitude. Yet when John Cena did similar things during his run on top, it was called having a good mind for the business. We need to ask ourselves, are we holding Roman to a different standard? Or is this genuinely about problematic behavior that would be concerning regardless of who was doing it? This controversy has ripple effects that extend beyond just WWE's locker room. Younger wrestlers coming up through the system are watching how this plays out. They're learning what it means to have power in this industry. They're seeing that once you reach a certain level, you can dictate terms, control your narrative, and protect your position. That's not inherently bad, but it can create an environment where collaboration becomes competition and mentorship becomes gatekeeping. There are also real consequences for the wrestlers who aren't in Roman's inner circle. If you're not part of the bloodline, not connected to the tribal chief's storylines, you might find yourself relegated to main event or fighting for screen time on a 3-hour Raw. That breeds frustration and resentment. AEW and other promotions are watching this carefully too. When WWE talent becomes unhappy with their position or their treatment, Tony Khan's phone starts ringing. The number of wrestlers who've left WWE in recent years citing creative frustration isn't a coincidence. When one person controls too much of the creative oxygen in a company, everyone else suffocates. And let's talk about the fans for a second. The divide in the wrestling community over Roman Reigns is intense. You've got the die-hard tribal chief supporters who believe he can do no wrong. You've got the skeptics who've never fully bought into his push. And you've got everyone in between trying to figure out how to feel about a wrestler who's simultaneously having the best run of his career while allegedly making life difficult for his coworkers. This division isn't healthy for the fandom. Wrestling is at its best when we're all invested in the storylines and debating the outcomes, not when we're fighting about whether the locker room leader is a visionary or a tyrant. So where do we go from here? How does WWE fix this situation, if it even needs fixing? First, they need to start building up other main event talents with the same protection and focus they've given Roman. That means letting people win big matches clean. That means giving them promo time to develop their characters. That means trusting them with important storylines instead of making everything orbit around the tribal chief. Second, there needs to be accountability at all levels. If Roman is genuinely creating a toxic environment backstage, WWE management needs to address it. Top stars don't get to be bullies just because they draw money. That's not how professional environments should operate. Third, and this might be the most important point, Roman himself needs to recognize his responsibility as a locker room leader. Being the top guy isn't just about protecting your spot. It's about elevating the entire roster. It's about making sure that the company is in better shape when you eventually step away than it was when you arrived. Stone Cold did that. The Rock did that. Even John Cena, for all the criticism he took during his run on top, made it a point to put over younger talent in his later years. Roman has the opportunity to do the same thing, but that window won't stay open forever. The wrestling business has always been about egos, politics, and power struggles. That's never going to change completely. But the best eras in wrestling history happened when the top stars understood that their success was connected to everyone else's success. Rising tides lift all boats. Roman Reigns can either be remembered as the tribal chief who ruled with wisdom and elevated everyone around him, or as the guy who held on to power so tightly that he forgot what made him special in the first place. Look, this controversy isn't going away. As long as Roman Reigns is on top, there are going to be questions about his backstage influence and whether he's using his power responsibly. That's the reality of being the face of a company. What matters now is how WWE handles it, how Roman responds to the criticism, and how fans process this information. We can love someone's work while still questioning their methods. We can appreciate their talent while demanding better behavior. These things aren't mutually exclusive. The tribal chief's reign has been historic. There's no denying that. But history also remembers how that reign ended and what legacy it left behind. Roman Reigns is writing his final chapter right now, and the choices he makes in the next few years will determine whether he's remembered as one of the all-time greats or as a cautionary tale about unchecked power. What do you think? Is Roman Reigns a visionary leader who's earned his influence? Or has WWE created a backstage problem they're too afraid to address? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's have a real conversation about this. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of wrestling fan we want here at Wrestle Scope. We don't shy away from the tough conversations. We dig into the stories that matter, and we always give you the full picture, not just the company line. So do me a favor, smash that like button if you appreciate honest wrestling content. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss when we drop our next deep dive. And share this video with another wrestling fan who needs to hear this story. The wrestling world is talking about Roman Reigns' backstage behavior, and now you know why. This is Wrestle Scope, where we go beyond the ring and into the real stories that shape professional wrestling. Until next time, keep questioning, keep watching, and acknowledge the truth.